Since its birth in August 1947, the Indian nation has often passed through difficult times. Consider the sufferings caused by the partition of the country, the famines and wars of the 1960s, the emergency of the late 1970s, and the communal writings of the late 1980s and early 1990s. The times our country is now going through may be the most challenging yet. This is because the novel coronavirus or the COVID 19 pandemic has led to at least six distinct crises. I'm not going to elaborate all those six. Nevertheless, some of these I will discuss on the basis of their merit. First, and the most apparent, is the medical crisis. Second is the economic crisis. Third, a major humanitarian crisis. Fourth, is broader social crisis. The fifth is the weakening of the Indian federal system. And the sixth, which is closely allied to the fifth one, is the weakening of Indian democracy. I shall elaborate the last two. The crisis of the weakening of the Indian federalism. The invocation of the Disaster Management Act has allowed the center to arrogate extreme powers to itself. At least in the first months of the pandemic, states were not given the autonomy they required to deal with the challenge in a manner best suited to their local contexts. The center kept on issuing a series of arbitrary and sometimes conflicting instructions from above. Meanwhile, the states are starved of financial resources by the center. Even the money owed to them under their share of GST collections has not been paid to them. The next crisis, which is closely allied to this one, which I earlier told as the weakening of the Indian democracy. Under the cover of the pandemic, intellectuals and activists are being arrested under draconian acts such as the UAPA. Ordinances are being passed and major policy decisions taken without being discussed in Parliament. Pressure is being put on the owners of major newspapers and television channels not to carry criticism of the government. Meanwhile, the state and the ruling party are furthering the personality cult of the Prime Minister. During the emergency, there was only one Devakant Barua who said, Indira is India and India is Indira. Now, cabinet ministers are outdoing one another in sickening acts of public sycophancy towards the Prime Minister. The Indian medical system is overburdened. The Indian economy is in a shambles. Indian society is divided and fragile. Indian federalism is weaker than before. The Indian state is becoming increasingly authoritarian. It is the combination of all these factors that makes this perhaps the greatest crisis the country has faced since the partition. How can we as a country come through this extraordinary difficult period with our economy, society, and polity still moderately intact? To begin with, the government must recognize clearly the many and interrelated dimensions of the problems our nation currently confronts. Second, it must learn from what Jawaharlal Nehru and Vallabhbhai Patel did back in 1947 when recognizing the enormity of the challenge the country then faced. They set aside ideological differences and got erstwhile opponents like B.R. Ambedkar into the cabinet. A national government of that kind might not be feasible now, but surely there is nothing to stop the Prime Minister from actively consulting opposition leaders with ability and expertise. Third, the Prime Minister must learn to respect and rely on experts in economics, science, and public health, rather than make decisions impulsively based on their potential dramatic effect. Fourth, the centre and the ruling party must altogether abandon their desire to harass states not ruled by the, of course, Bharatiya Janata Party. Fifth, the centre must accord full autonomy to the civil services, the armed forces, the judiciary, and the investigative agencies rather than seek to make them instruments of those currently in power. This is a partial list of suggestions based on one person's understanding of our past and our present. It remains only for me to reiterate that this is no ordinary predicament. Rather, this may very well be the greatest challenge in the history of the Republic. We shall need all our wisdom, all our resources, and all our compassion to overcome it.